Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Our John Charles has designed a wonderful program with three authors: Allison Brennan, Christina Estes out here, and Jenn McKinlay, all local authors of great talent and charm. And so we're delighted to have them here. But we thought we might do a little preview of a few summer reading suggestions. And so I'm going to go first, and then John will take over, talk to the authors, and make his reading suggestions. John and I sometimes agree, and sometimes we don't. So you can figure out what, based on maybe like cross-referencing, like librarians do, what might actually work. So I'm going to start with two Australians, one of which I just did the book launch for The White Crow, the American book launch. And I want to tell you, this is maybe the best British police procedural that I have read in years. It's absolutely favorite. It is so good. Publishers Weekly just waxed over it. It's not just the plot, it's the depth of the characters. And, you know, he's the most elegant writer. It's his 19th book. And he revealed that it is going to be a British television series. And while he did not want the lead character in here, Philomena, that we met 2 years ago, to be a series, now he does. Oh, surprise. So his next book is going to be set in Australia where he lives, because all of his other books have been set in London, but then he's going to come back to her. And I'm really glad because despite all the tricky things in the plot that are wrapped up, there are two or three things that you really would like to know what's going to happen next. So I am very excited about this. Philomena is a young officer with the Metropolitan Police, and her family are East End gangsters. Now, apparently, you can join the police in England, even if your entire family is criminal, as long as you can prove that you yourself are not a criminal. But as you imagine, there's always going to conflict will arise, right? And I really loved her family, and their story does not go where you think it's going. So that's what I will say. It's our British crime pick for July, and I think we're sold out, but we have a whole bunch coming. So this one I highly recommend. My other Australian, who is coming here to launch her book on Sunday, I think it's August. What's your date, sweetheart? You. Is yours the 18th? All right, so Solari will be here on the 17th, which is Sunday. Yep. And this is a book that she wrote based on a trip she and her sister took on the Orient Express. So she has sort of done her own version of the Orient Express. And Solari is a very original voice. I'm sorry, I'm holding up the wrong book. No wonder you're looking confused. I was deceived by the fact it was a black cover. Here it is. All right, this is the actual book. I'm so sorry. All right. Well, you're all awake. I've proved that. All right. It's called August 17th, Sunday at 2 o'clock. And it's a big deal for her to come from Australia. Solari just won the Mary Higgins Clark Award at the Edgars. Anyway, the book is called Five Found Dead. And the other reason that I really love supporting Solari is that she has survived a really terrible cancer diagnosis, a double cancer diagnosis, and with absolute bravery and courage. And I think part of it is she wrote her way through it. But she is now, if not cured, in remission enough to actually travel. So I really admire that, you know. Those of you who are writers might realize that maybe one way you can write your way through trauma in your life is to actually write your way through it, right? There we go. All right, now we'll get to this book. Mariana was here last Sunday, a couple days ago, and this is a Gothic. And the Gothic is just like taking off, and it's achieving many different forms. It's a very interesting genre to marry to mystery, because mystery requires more logic and more, generally does. Whereas the Gothic sometimes has actual supernatural or hints of supernatural, and it's based on suspense and suspicion and dark family secrets. And so trying to marry those genres is sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But I like the way this one takes place in 1942 in a Hudson River village in upstate New York, and it's a really cool Gothic. Now, I think that the hallmark of a great Gothic is a great house. I mean, we're going to go back to Rebecca, but one of the earliest Gothics was the Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole, which even Jane Austen mentions. And so generally there is some kind of, if not a mansion, there's one coming up next week, a debut Party of Liars. Is it? Do you remember what it's called? Is it the Party for Liars? Party of Liars. Okay, and it's set in Texas Hill Country in some kind of a mega mansion where somebody falls off a balcony. But it's still a Gothic, even though it's not a British castle. You can even do a Gothic in a ship. Ruth Ware has done some very interesting sort of Gothic. John can talk to you more about that. But I really like the form and the contrast and the conflicts of trying to write a mystery. It's also a Gothic, I think, can be really interesting. And I thought Mariana brought it off really well. We have paperbacks of that for sale currently. Now, Reese got her books to sign today, apparently by, as she said, an amateur working in the warehouse department. So we may have to figure out how to actually get the books here. She has written a different kind of book, and it's called Mrs. Endicott's Splendid Adventure. And we start in Surrey, England in 1938, and after 30 years of devoted marriage, the husband sits down and says to his wife, I want a divorce. I've met somebody younger and more interesting, and I'll buy you a small flat, or no, he already had one. You can have a small flat in London and drop around to Harrods once a week. And she thinks that's a pretty piss poor payment for 30 years. And so she hires her own lawyer, and she achieves a great financial settlement, which includes that apartment that she can then rent out for even more income. And she and two other characters, or two other women in the village, they steal his car, or she thinks she can just possess it, a Bentley, and they drive off to southern France. And they have a breakdown as they are approaching Nice in a small village, and it goes from there. And it's really fun. And it also has, because inevitably with Reese and her historicals, the war comes into it, right? And so if we're in 1938 settling in the south of France, we know that we are eventually going to be going through 1940s in the south of France. So there's some really fascinating characters in there, but this is feminist power in this book, I loved it. It's really charming and very funny. So we're doing a Zoom event, and we will have signed copies of it. Goes on sale August 1st, I think it is, something like that. This is one I haven't read yet, but I can hardly resist it. It's called The Marigold Cottages Murder Collective. Simply put, it's the most charming, heartfelt, and funniest mystery I have read, says Katie Hayes, whose books I like. Mrs. B, the landlady of the Marigold Cottages, is a stubborn idealist who only rents to people she cares about. An anxious young playwright with a dark past, an agoraphobe who likes to overshare, a queer sculptor raising two kids along, a perfectionist, and a finance bro who's hiding secrets, and they live in dollhouse bungalows in Santa Barbara until. So I like it. It's kind of a California village mystery. It sounds to me like it's probably ripped up out of, the revered English village mystery. There is unsurprisingly in this political climate, the cozy is roaring back. And not only is it roaring back, but books you would not previously have considered to be cozy are now called cozies. The British have never, they call P.D. James a cozy writer. So I'm serious, so when there are like 8 bodies strewn bleeding across the church and all the rest of it, to the British, it was still a cozy, right? So there's a huge range in cozies now. And this one obviously is meant to sort of score in there. I can also point out that the Senior Sleuth is also making great inroads into things. So I'm in favor of that because I'd like to think that I can still do things. All right, Lisa Gardner. She has kicked off her book tours for years at the Poison Pen, even though she lives in New Hampshire. And she will be here on August 12th with the new Frankie Elkins, which I'm dying to read. And our local author Isabella Maldonado, who's friends with Lisa, is going to be the guest host. And I can't actually tell you anything more than that because I'm taking this one home to read. Even I can't read that far ahead, but I wanted to alert you to that, Lisa. Even more confusing, on July 23rd, the other Lisa, Lisa Scottolini, will be with us. And here we have another Gothic. It does not go where you think it's going to go. It is set in Tuscany. Julia Pritzer is beginning to think she's cursed. She's lost her adoptive parents, then her husband is murdered in what looks like a random attack. She realizes her horoscope essentially foretold his death, and she begins to spiral. And then out of the blue, from a completely unknown person, she's informed that she's inherited a Tuscan villa and vineyard. Her benefactor is a total stranger named Amelia Rossi. So, of course, she has to go off to Tuscany, right, to figure it all out. So I sort of thought Lisa was losing her mind halfway through this book. But then being Lisa, and she's a lawyer, keep that in mind. And remember what I said about marrying the Gothic to the crime novel. It all begins to make sense. It's really a lot of fun. Lisa's a lot of fun. So she will be here on July 23rd. And I didn't bring it, but the night before, on July 22nd, Daniel Silva will be here. And his book, did any of you see Conclave, the movie? If you didn't, I really recommend you watch it. And although you will see that the end of it presupposes a pope that probably is never going to exist, the whole thing about the way the Vatican and the Curia work, the Sistine Chapel, which is not the real Sistine Chapel. They apparently built a set that copied it all. Anyway, this is a book in which Gabriel Allon, now fully retired from the spy game, is retouching or restoring a Titian in Venice. And he's out at the end of the point and finds a body in the water. And amazingly, she turns out to be an art historian at the Vatican. So the book all then moves to the Vatican, and it's really very cool. And Gabriel orchestrates a scam, which I really enjoyed. So it's a lot of fun. He's a brilliant writer. I think his books just are like silk. They just sort of flow past you. And I think that he made a great decision, having aged Gabriel really out of the spy game, to, put him back. Because if you read the first one, The Kill Artist, that's how we meet him. He's on his back on scaffolding, restoring a painting in a church in Venice. And so he's basically taken Gabriel back to his roots. But this one is almost entirely set in the Vatican or around it. And I think it's incredibly timely, because who knew that the Pope was going to die and we would have a new Pope? And I don't know that the new Pope will live up to the Pope in Gabriel's book any more than he will in the Pope in the Conclave, but it's a happy thought. So I recommend it. What else have I got in here? Megan Miranda. I don't know if you guys know Megan. She will be here with J.T. Allison. I'm trying to remember. Is it August 5th? Does that sound right? Whenever it is, right? Early August. She will be here with J.T. Allison, right? And Megan kind of writes similar but different. You know how that's the publishing mantra, is write the same thing but different. And Megan manages to achieve that in that she, usually they're female-centric. In this case, it's a decades-old secret that drove a young woman from her hometown that now threatens her college-bound daughter. And she's very good on small towns. In this case, it's Wyatt Valley, a picturesque college town in the Virginia mountains. And I always like going with her to wherever it is. She's a very crafty plotter. There are often big surprises in her books. And she's a sweetheart. So I'm looking forward to reading it. This one, too, is coming home with me. And finally, what else do I have? I just grabbed them randomly off my shelf. While I was away for 3.5 weeks, 58 ARCs arrived at my house. They are stepped on the floor. There are, this week alone, 498 new adult hardcovers publishing. I can only go through so many of them, right? So, it's just getting to be a nearly impossible task to screen out new books that I think you will like. And I try not to just look at authors we know, like Lisa's and Megan and all, but I try to look for authors that we don't know. I don't have a copy here, but if you like a cozy, a book called Novel Murder, which is really fun. It was our June British Crime pick, is just great. I mean, perfectly hopeless person, perfectly hopeless writer, she thinks, goes to a crime festival in a small village in England. It's just great. And, she's a new voice. My favorite thing is to support new writers. It really is. So you never know. And then there's my friend David Rosenfeld. We have to love him for the cover. The signed books are on their way to us, he informed me. This is the 31st book by Andy Carpenter, and they are all involve a dog, and the story, as I understand it, the publisher picks the dog for the photograph, and then David has to work out what's going to happen to the dog. But anyway, this is Andy Carpenter before he became Andy Carpenter. He spent 3 years after graduating from law school, working as a prosecutor in Paterson, New Jersey. But having seen how the system never works out for the little guy, he starts his own practice as a defense attorney. But it turns out he has a criminal father who fortuitously leaves him a lot of money. And that means that, he can just take whatever cases he likes. So his eventual wife in this series, one of my favorite phrases ever, says that he is professionally retired. But it's always a dog that draws him back reluctantly into briefly practicing law, which he never means to make any money. So he can do all this great pro bono stuff. I think they're a lot of fun. I really do. And our author that you will not be familiar with is called Laura Shepard Robertson, and she writes some of the best British historical mysteries that I have read. We're in London in 1749. Following the murder of her husband in a violent street robbery, Hannah Cole is struggling to keep her head above water. Her confectionery shop, gotta love that, on Piccadilly is barely turning a profit. Her suppliers are conspiring to put her out of business. When she learns that her husband had a large sum of money in his bank account that she knew nothing about, the surprise is extremely welcome. But, right, gift horses, right? There we are. But honestly, I think this is only her third book. She wrote a book called The Square of Sevens, but I think she's a wonderful writer. So if you're looking for history. And then finally, the concept of this is so much fun. The Phoenix Pencil Company. You have to read the whole letter by Allison King, who's Asian American, but the story is really about this girl trying to connect her grandmother from Shanghai with her grandmother's best friend who remained in Shanghai, and the grandmother's family made pencils. They grew the wood, and they hollowed out the cores, and they put the lead inside, and then the Japanese came. And so it's an immigrant story, but what's fun is that her grandmother doesn't speak English very well. She doesn't speak Chinese very well, and so they communicate by text largely with emojis that are, I'm serious, it's so much fun. I was looking at them. So this is one in which there's some pretty inventive story, typography or storytelling involved in it, and you can tell she's a young writer because she really understands social media. She's working for a company that wants to connect people through social media, and it's really fascinating the way she develops it in a good way, in a way where social media actually unites people rather than dividing people and making them tribal. So I've only read the first part of it. As I was actually reading it when I looked at the time and realized I had to talk to Michael at 4 o'clock. Even I can't read that fast. But honestly, I really think, again, it's a debut. So I'll let you know in the July newsletter whether the book holds up. But I really love the concept. So that's it for me. It's just a small sample of the 498 books, currently coming. So, John, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Come on, Jen. Come on, Christina.
Reload my elegant conveyance. There we go. Yay.
showstopper, aren't you?
You are.
Now we switch to our author portion of the program. We've got Jenn McKinlay, Christina Estes, and Allison Brennan here tonight to talk about their new book and what's coming. Why don't we start with you, Allison, because Beach Reads and Deadly Deeds was wonderful, but it was a bit of a departure for you.
Yes, it was. Is this on? Or do I need to?
Make sure it's green.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes, Beach Reads and Deadly Deeds came out 2 weeks ago, and it is a lot lighter than what I normally write. Usually I write kind of darker suspense books, police procedurals. I almost always have a cop as one of the characters. And in this one, I was approached with the idea, how about writing something like more like an amateur sleuth? And I said, it was a standalone. I said, sure, why not? I will do it. So I came up with Mia Crawford, a financial planner who is forced to go on a vacation to a Caribbean island, and where she's offered a promotion, so she realizes this may be her last vacation ever because she's a workaholic. And she's also extremely responsible. She takes care of her grandmother. She has cats. She will never let anybody down. And then she finds out that a guest disappeared right before she arrived. And she finds clues to the disappearance in the margins of a book that she picks up on the free read table. And then, of course, everybody becomes suspects.
Christina, there's possibly 2 people left who don't know about Off the Air, but for those 2 people, tell them what it's about.
Wait, thank you for asking, but at some point, can we talk about spicy levels with
Yes.
romance? Because I am not a big romance reader, and I was like, how spicy is this, Allison?
Oh, Allison is not spicy. You'd be
Oh,
surprised.
really?
Oh, my
Oh.
God, yes.
Okay. We'll come back to that thing. So I don't have spice in my books, clearly, or I wouldn't have been surprised reading Allison. So Off the Air is my debut that was published last year. And then the sequel is The Story That Wouldn't Die, and that will be published August, and I'll launch here August 18th. And even though you asked about Off the Air, I want to be rude and just answer the way a politician would, which is talk about what they want to talk about, which is the new book. Is that okay?
Well, we'll give them a little bit of the old book
Okay,
because
so
they are connected. It's not like
Thank you. Yes, they are. Oh, so Off the Air is the first in a series, and
Yes.
it features a Phoenix TV reporter investigating the suspicious death of a controversial radio talk show host. And so the sequel is The Story That Wouldn't Die. It actually picks up where Off the Air left off, which is a real thing that happened in Phoenix at City Hall with the mayor stuck in the elevator. But the mayor's not. Oh, anyway. Okay. So
This
I'm
is
not
being
doing
live
well.
streamed, so be careful how much you reveal.
So The Story That Wouldn't Die is the sequel, and the main character, Jolene, is a Phoenix TV reporter, as I mentioned, and she's looking into the death of a beloved small business owner. She doesn't think it was an accident, starts asking questions because he had been raising questions about possibly shady deals at City Hall, and so she starts digging, and there are people who don't want her digging, and they're out to kill her story and maybe her.
Jen, you're kind of in between books. What can you tell us about I Can't Even and then what's coming?
Yeah, so I have a summer rom-com called I Can't Even. It's fairly spicy, I think.
Well,
What's
on,
give me a
really,
spicy level.
oh my God, you would not believe there's books out there that NC-17 is the rating for.
Yeah, mine is like there's a wetsuit. There's
Yours like
sand,
R,
there's-
maybe.
Yeah, they're spicy.
That does not sound.
No, it was like it was enemies to lovers. It's surfing. Yeah, it's a little spicy. It's a little spicy.
A little spicy.
Like, maybe I don't know when they do the little peppers. I think
It
it's
would be
maybe
like
a
2.5.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. 2.5, 3.
4 or 5.
Well, I think 5 is when they're having sex like every 3 pages.
Okay.
That's a 5.
Okay.
I shoot for 2 big love scenes in every book. You know, big ones, you know, like gotta go have a cigarette kind of love scenes. And then, except for we don't do that anymore. Yeah, so that's like a 2. And then I don't know what would you call a 3 or a 4? More than 2, less than every page.
It's not just the amount, it's the descriptive level that's
yeah,
involved.
I think I'm a little bit.
Understated.
I'm not a closed door. There's people who do closed door, and those can be super hot too.
They can.
Because you get right there, and then they slam the door in, which I find very disappointing. I'm just going to say.
But back to I Can't
oh,
Even.
sorry. Oh, yeah, I wrote a book. Did you know?
Yeah.
So I can't even. I wrote, 2016, the romance market was changing, and I was writing your mass market books, and it was so much fun. It was rom-coms. I did a dog series. Barbara was talking about dogs. The first one was called About a Dog, super fun. And then I wrote one that was set in a romance bookstore. But mass market was dying, because the indies were coming in at a price point that publishers couldn't compete with. Trade hadn't really started happening. So my publisher was like, we want you to stay in rom-coms, but you have to go bigger, So the first thing I wrote was in the wake of my dad dying, which a spicy surfer romance doesn't seem like it would have anything to do with me grieving my dad. But my dad and I had a complicated relationship. And in I Can't Even, it's a young woman who's in New York, and she is called by her sisters to come home because their mom is dying. But she and the mom, no bueno, very toxic. So she comes home, and of course the mom's first response is like, you. And she's like, oh, great, not going to have the, thing that I've been looking for. So I don't think it's a spoiler, but they go through the losing of the mom. So if you have grief issues, it's probably not a great book to read. But she finds out a lot more about her past. She kind of finds out why her mom feels that way about her. But at the same time, she left town under kind of secret circumstances, leaving behind the love of her life. And he never really knows why she leaves. He has a suspicion and a theory, but he's wrong. So when she comes back, he was the boy next door. And when she comes back and she's in her mother's house and she's dealing with her sisters and her mom, she looks, and he's back too because he's bought his parents' house. So I Can't Even is like, I can't believe this is happening to me. So the boy next door, and so they reconnect, and they have to get through a lot of stuff. And yeah.
This is a segue question, but can we still get those Berkeley romances? Or are they kind of in limbo?
I think you can get them in ebook, but I don't know about print. Print is tough now. And honestly, now that I'm old, how do people read mass market? That print is so tiny. It's like, I love the ebook because you can kind of
Yeah,
or the
but
trade.
Trade is, but they won't re-release them in trade.
No.
Yeah.
Stingy.
Why surfing?
We used to, our family vacations with our sons were always, San Diego's like our vacation spot because it's the closest beach really, and I got really into surfing, so I was very bad at it, but I tried, man. I tried.
And then you have something coming in September that people can pre-order. Witches of Dubious Origin.
Yeah, that's actually end of October, right before Halloween.
That's right.
It's my first fantasy.
With romantic overtones.
Yeah, there's a romance. There's a couple of mysteries. There's magic. It's a librarian. It's set in a library called, it's a museum of literature in New York City, but they have a department called the Books of Dubious Origin, which was the original title. We'll just let that sit there. And it's a collection of books that are dubious. They're magical. They have powers that nobody should be attached to. And I have a little small-town librarian who just wants a quiet life. That's all she wants. Just a quiet life. Just leave me alone. Let me have my junk food and my quiet house.
Greta Garbo of librarians.
Yes, just leave me alone. Just be quiet. Shh. And then a book arrives, and she finds out the family grimoire. And then she finds out the family gift as witches. And she knew there was witches in the family, but the grimoire is a surprise. And then the fact that they can raise the dead, also a surprise. So she has to go to New York to this Museum of Literature, to the people with Books of Dubious Origin, because she can't open it. She's like, help me. And then her whole life changes.
What's that on the spicy level?
Well, I wanted it to be spicier, but they were like, no, this is a
No.
series.
Especially
so you gotta.
because the whole trend is towards cozy fantasy, so they don't want.
Well, but Legends and Lattes was a little spicy. It was a 2.
You're going to have to read some books that I'm going to show you. Your definition of spice is just not.
For a romance writer.
Yes.
It's like, girl. Well, for me, I was gonna have it be spicier because the one of the guys who works in the Books of Dubious Origin department is British, because of course he is, and he has a thing. I don't know if I made it up or it exists. I did so much research on witchcraft that I don't know what's real anymore. What I made up, but he has a thing called avian kinesis, so he can take over birds. So on the cover. Yeah, like he just kind of comes into like he go kind of. It's kind of like that astral plane stuff where you kind of go unconscious, but you're walking in something else. But he does it with ravens. So there's this super cool raven on the cover that I love so much. But anyway, he's kind of the hero. And I was gonna like, and my editor was like, no, I see this as a series. Pull it back, and I'm like, okay. But then I'm like, if you're not spicy in the first book, can you be spicy in the third book? Or are the people who don't want spice going to be upset? And the people who want spice, are they going to be mad that the first book doesn't have spice? And oh my God, it's so hard being
That
a
way
writer.
lies madness. So
Yes!
just-
This is why we drink. Anyway, so that's me.
Christina, you've previewed what's coming in August. So my question for you is, you have a background in journalism, and you've done a lot of local kinds of things in your stories. How much can you get away with real things in your story without getting smacked by friends and
By real people.
Yeah.
That so you know what? I wrote Off the Air, and it has real Phoenix landmarks and history and businesses. And it wasn't until it came out, and it was at an event when someone said, what did people think? Did anybody say no, they didn't want to be in the book? And I said, well, I didn't ask, because like who doesn't want to be in a book? Like, I think that's the coolest thing.
depends
ever.
on what you do to them in the book, I would think. But
I didn't. Well, yeah. Although the businesses, I didn't make anything awful happen at the business. They all had personal meaning, and so with the story that wouldn't die that's coming out in August, same thing. I didn't ask permission, so we'll see what happens. Again, I'm not making an awful thing happen at any of these businesses, and I think it's pretty cool. Like I said, I would love to be even a bad person. You could put me in as a bad person. I would think it would be cool.
well, sometimes authors auction off the right to be a villain or a murder victim. Or
Yeah, apparently I'm not smart enough to think that way, but perhaps I can do that for the next one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the key part.
I'll just
No.
add, because I've put real businesses and stuff in. This is the rule, the general rule of thumb. And when my very, very first book, I was with Random House, and I asked for an opinion. Basically, in a nutshell, you can use Starbucks in your book, but the barista better not poison the drink. And that's been kind of my rule of thumb with using real businesses. So as long as they can't sue you if you're not saying anything bad or libelous or anything that's going to hurt their business.
You hope.
I've heard Disney, though, is very litigious. Though if you
Yeah, I actually couldn't use. Oh gosh, I cannot remember what it was. I had a Disney reference in a book, and Mira made me take it out, and I can't remember exactly what it was. It might have been just something as simple as like somebody said bippity boppity boo or whatever. I don't remember exactly what it was. But it was a very simple thing. It was like a one line, and they go no, because it was Disney, but other things, it's not a big deal.
Allison, you've written a lot of different kinds of books. How do you know when you're approaching your next project? I want to write intense suspense. I want to write flirty rom-com. I want to write amateur sleuth.
It's whatever I'm contracted to write,
Okay.
because they pay me. I mean, and honestly, so I have right now, I'm revising the 7th Quinn and Costa and writing a standalone for Minotaur that it comes out next August, that I haven't really talked much about because it was just, I don't usually talk about the book until after it's like done, and then I can like, oh, it's done, it's off, now I have a publication date, everything. But yeah, I'm doing a standalone. It's very like a family suspense set in Northeast Texas about a flood and an evil, big agribusiness trying to take over all these small businesses. It's actually based on. Okay, now I'm completely digressing. But I had this idea that I was going to basically have a pipeline that was going to go through, and so the bad business wanted to take over these small farms in order to put this pipeline through, and they were colluding with local politicians to get it done. And then I was talking to a friend of my son, who was actually born and raised and had a ranch in North Texas in the Panhandle, and he said there's actually a very real situation in Texas going on right now where utility companies are buying up strips of land. So basically they're giving good money for these strips of land, but the fine print is you're giving up your mineral rights. So on this like 30 feet wide strip of land, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this money, and these small farms are struggling, so they're getting like a cash thing. So they're getting paid for it. It's not being stolen, but then they can do anything they want with that strip of land. So if you have like cattle, you're kind of screwed. Your cattle can't go from one part of your land to the other part of your land. And then they could also, there's water issues and mineral issues, and they could start putting wells in. And so I said, okay, that is a much, much better idea than mine, because I've done corrupt politicians up the wazoo. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And so now the whole story's kind of built on that, that basically fine print. So anyway, so it's just really exciting. So that's what I'm writing, finishing up that now, and then I'm writing the next Angel Heart book, and then the next Guanacosta book. So it's like, it was whatever I get contracted for, and it's like, okay, it's due now, it's due now, it's due now. But getting back to the spice, I don't think my book was that spicy.
What would you put it on the spice level?
Christina's not familiar with romance, so
Would
it's,
you
it's
say mine was
spicy.
a 2?
No, I would say it's like a 1.5.
Thank
maybe.
you. Okay.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
Boy, Christina, you're in for a rude shock when you read
You
something.
Yes,
give her
I'm going
some
to have
books.
to read
Give her some
something that
books.
you
Give her some
suggest.
dark romance.
Well, I mean, Tessa Bailey is called the Michelangelo of dirty talk, so just read her. Yeah.
I'll be listening to your recommendations for sure.
Let's talk about each of you as readers, because that's what the theme of this program is, summer reading. Who are some of your favorite authors? What do you think of as the perfect beach or summer read? We'll start with you, Allison.
well, oh gosh, some of my favorite authors. There's a lot. Obviously, I've read books by both of these authors. I read your first book, of course.
Of course, we
Actually, I
paid you to
listened
say
it on-
that.
I listened to it on audio. Great narrator. If you like audiobooks, her narrator is fantastic. She really nailed Jolene's voice, I felt. And then I love your library, the Briar, what is it called? Briar Creek. See, I knew I was close. Love that series. That is so much fun. In fact, my mom and I listened to it. We were on a road trip driving up to California. So it was a couple years ago. And so whatever the latest book was, I said, I'm going to get this on Audible. And we listened to it driving up, because obviously when you're on a long drive, there's only so much music you can listen to. So I think, my favorite authors tend to be a little darker, like Robert Crace, The Big Empty, which is his most recent book. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely fabulous. The best Elvis Cole book probably since Taken, which was one of my all-time favorites. I love, Lisa Gardner. I have the arc that Barbara had, and it's on my desk waiting for me to be done with the books that I'm writing. And, so I do love the suspense, but I would probably say for a fun summer read, Lucy Score's Riley Thorne series. Have you read that?
I did start that.
The right.
With one with the flowers on the cover? Is that the one?
No,
No,
that's
this is
her
the more
romance.
mystery-oriented.
This is a romantic suspense about a
Okay.
reluctant psychic. Laugh out loud funny.
Okay.
I mean, literally, I listened to it on audio, and I'm laughing as I'm walking every morning. You got to walk. I'm like laughing out loud. And then that brings me up to El Casamona, who came here in March, that I was lucky enough to be able to interview. She also makes me laugh out loud. So to me, I think, okay, those are a little bit more, if you say summer is lighter, those would be the two series that I literally just listen to them one right after the other, because they are hilarious. And, who doesn't like to laugh?
Christina, you're
Good way to start your morning, walking and laughing. That's really good.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna pull the politician again and answer what I want to answer, because I don't have the greatest.
Are you running for office?
No, I am not, and I never will. But I'm gonna go by what I've read recently, because I liked them. Is that
Sure.
fair?
Yes.
Okay. Though I'm going to use this opportunity to also say I love Jenn's books. And if anybody who knows the Cupcake series, do you know that? Oh my gosh, then you're totally going to love my next book, because there's like a big old Easter egg in there. So, okay.
And I was very happy with that.
That's because I really like her as a person and as an author, so that's why I did that. So, what I've read recently that I liked, I was fortunate to interview Eliza Reed when she was here, and so her book is Death on the Island, and she's former First Lady of Iceland. She's also co-founder of the Icelandic Writers Retreat, if I'm going to say that correctly. And it was really interesting because it was set on the Westman Islands, a real place that has a real history that was interesting. And the background is a Canadian ambassador and his wife are going there for a diplomatic dinner, and then there's murder and all this good stuff. And her background is she's Canadian, and she married the guy from Iceland that resulted in her being the former first lady. So it was just really interesting because it's not something I don't think I would have come across on my own, and it was a really interesting book that you learn about Iceland, but it's not bogged down, and it's very fast moving, and it's just really interesting. And it's going to be a series, so I can't wait to see. She created this drink in there called the Flaming Viking that became this show, and so I can't wait to see what it's going to be like. And then the other I read that's very different recently is the first YA young adult novel by Mia P. Manansala. And I love Mia's cozy mystery series. So her cozy mysteries is set around a Filipino family restaurant and coffee shop. And so this is her first YA novel, and it's a high school student who actually reads. She's a tarot card reader. At school, her mom's a PI, her dad's a mystery author, and I don't know anything about tarot cards, but I do now. Not very, I mean, I'm not going to do it. I don't know that well, but it was totally out of what I normally read. Kind of like your, I guess, not very spicy romance that I thought was spicy. I mean, I didn't think it was super spicy, but I was just like, oh, Allison, wow.
I will say my daughter skipped over the scene.
I mean, it's different from her other books,
yes,
but it's
that's
not.
what it was.
Yeah.
That's maybe why it seemed so to me, was because I was like, I'm not used to Allison's writing. So Mia's
It would be
book
like
is-
if Jenn wrote serious literary fiction. You'd be kind of.
I would be like, what is wrong with Jenn?
Did she get hit? Sorry.
She got hit on the head surfing.
All right, your turn, Jenn.
Okay, so because I wrote my first fantasy, I've been reading a lot of fantasy. So I started reading a book called The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. It's pretty weighty. I wouldn't say cozy fantasy, but I like big books in summer because the idea is that you're on vacation. You know, even as an adult, you have like a week. So it's not. I mean, I spent my summers as a kid reading. Like a nerd. Like I blew through all 99 Nancy Drews when I was 9. That's how I remember it. 99 Nancy Drews, and I was 9 in a summer. And I sat under the dogwood tree at our and that was my summer. My brother would have to be like, let's go swimming. And I'd be like, reading. But I would go swimming because it was really hot. But anyway, I wasn't a total whatever. So for me, summer's big books. Like when I think about like Lord of the Rings and the stuff you could read, you know, when you were out of school and your parents wouldn't bother you if you were reading, because they thought you were being smart. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're watching TV, you're busted. But if you're reading, you know. So The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence is my most recent kind of big summer book. It's a fantasy. It's set in a library. I've never read anything like it, and I thought I kind of was like, oh, I got this. That guy threw me a twist that I'm still recovering from. Do you know what I mean? It's like one of those, and it was like all the way towards the end of the book where I was just like, I need to sit for a minute and just kind of think on this. And it was brilliant. So I highly recommend The Book That Wouldn't Burn if you're looking for a big fantasy summer read and you like a library setting. The other series I'm obsessed with, and I am skewing fantasy because that's all I've been reading while I'm trying to figure out the genre that I'm now in, is the Emily Wilde books. So it's like the Emily Wilde book. Encyclopedia of Fairies is the first one, and then the Map of the Other Worlds, and she just came out with the third one, Compendium of something. Sorry, Heather Fawcett is the author. I love it. It's set in like 1910. It's in Cambridge. You just feel like smarter when you read it, even though you're not. You're still stupid, but you feel smarter reading her
It's
books.
like watching Masterpiece Theater.
Yeah, I feel so much smarter when I watch any British thing. I'm like, oh, I'm so smart. But so I really enjoyed that series. And then I read Reese's book that Barbara held up earlier. It's delightful. I got an arc because she's my friend, and that's fantastic. And then I'm going to give a plug for another friend. I write a blog with a bunch of writers, and Hank Felipe Ryan has a new book coming out. It drops the same day as Dan Brown. She has said that so many times. That's what I remember. I know, but it's so good. And she's going to shoot me because I can't remember the title, but all you need to know is it's Hank Felipe. Do you know? All This Could Be Yours. Thank you. But the premise is genius. It's a author on a book tour. essentially being stalked. And Hank has been on enough book tours. You know it's going to be good. So I'm going to bug her for an arc as soon as she gets them. But so I'm looking forward to that one. That to me is a summer read. You know, Reese's book is definitely a summer read, especially if we want to go to France. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I'm.
There's so many books.
You know what? I just listened to something I totally forgot I was going to recommend it. Was the Ex-Girlfriend's Murder Club. I don't know if anybody else read the arc. So I got the audio arc because I asked very nicely for it. And it was actually, I wasn't 100% sure I was going to like it. But I really, really liked it. She had such a strong voice. It was told in first person. And I just felt it felt very authentic to me. It just felt like this is, basically the whole premise is three women, a girl, the main character, finds out that her boyfriend, who she's falling in love with, she thinks he's going to propose to her and ends up proposing to somebody else in front of her. And she realizes that he has multiple girlfriends. And that's why she can only see him on Wednesdays and Sundays. And so it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it was funny. And it was really, really well done while also giving some very deep truths about human nature and friendship. And, I really, really, I was surprised I enjoyed it, but I did.
You talk about voice, which is interesting because authors do have a voice. Allison, you've written a number of different kinds of books, but your voice stays the same. Same for Jenn. Your voice is the same throughout your different books. Christina, you're a little bit earlier on the track, but your voice is consistent. How would you describe your voice to readers? And we'll start with you, Allison.
I don't think I can. I mean, I don't know what my voice is. I mean, I do understand what you say. I mean, about the voice, because it is consistent. In fact, my mom said when she read Beach Reads and Deadly Deeds, she had to forget I wrote it because it sounded weird to her, because here I was writing something lighter. Actually, believe it or not, I actually had more sex in my romantic suspense books. I wrote 12 romantic suspense early in my career from 2006 to 2009. And there was like 2 or 3 love scenes in it because,
that was common at that time.
It was. And I didn't think it was anything. Some people complained, but honestly, I got more negative feedback about my characters saying bad words than I do about my characters having sex. And it's not like I have a lot. To me, it's like, okay, 5 pages. My book's 400 pages long. If I have a 5 to 8 page love scene, to me, that's little. That's just small. That's 1.5 spice, right? I'm going to have to try for 2 in the next one.
I'm going to go for 3. Although I don't even know what that is, but I'm going to try.
Yeah.
John will tell you.
What about you, Jenn? What's your voice like?
I think humor. I think I always write. I don't take it. Yeah, shocking. My coping mechanism in life is just humor. Like if I'm not laughing, and I have been in the darkest parts of my life where I just did not think there was a way up, and I'm the one who's laughing at the funeral. I mean, because I'll think of something ridiculous that the deceased did, or it's like
Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah, it's bad. This is my theory because I'm like Gen X, hardcore, latchkey. So my brother and I got home. Nobody was home. So we were raised by sitcoms. I can even still tell you the lineup. It was all reruns. It was the Brady Bunch, the Monkees, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, potentially the Flintstones, like whatever we could cram in before Mom got home. I can't have a problem that lasts more than 22.5 minutes. I'm out of coping right then. And everything was a joke. It's like, they always made, like, no matter what happened. The other thing I remember about my generation is Christy McNichols, and everything was a very special episode. And you knew they were going to, like, go deep for an hour, but then they'd be laughing again because everything's fine. So I think my whole generation is just kind of like, you have to crack a joke. When I meet people who don't have senses of humor, and that's fine, we're all whatever, but I'm always like, how do you even get out of bed? Like, how? Like, my dog will make me laugh before I'm even up and moving, or my husband, or the other 5 cats and the other dog. And, so I would just say my voice through all genres is you're going to find humor. And if you don't have a sense of humor, you're probably not going to like me, but that's okay.
Yeah. Christina?
Oh, I said I didn't know how to answer that, other than I write it in first person because it helps me.
You do, but there's kind of a quirkiness to your writing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. What does that mean?
It's a good thing.
Yes.
She's such
Um,
a newbie.
yeah.
What does that mean?
On the level, what is that?
It's,
Sex spice.
there's no it's
Charm.
charm. Yeah, I guess is another word. There's an endearing quality to your writing.
Thank you. I've discovered some people don't like reporter characters. I'm like, what? So
Readers, you can't predict them. Some men readers will not read women authors. Some women readers will not read male authors. Some people won't read certain. Reading is it's a puzzle. Yeah.
do you think, I feel like there are a lot of main characters that are, I think there are more main characters that are women than men now.
Yes.
And so many men are writing female main characters, which is nothing wrong with, but I mean, it just seems different than it was. Oh, really?
No. No. If you're not a woman, if you haven't had a period, no. Shoo. That's the end of that.
Okay.
So you're not good with that, but it's okay if you write about witches and you're not a
Yeah.
witch.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I could be a witch. You don't know. John's going to find interesting things happening to him. No, I'm kidding. I would never.
Let's.
No, I'm totally kidding. I don't mean to be
Oh,
that
I know.
hardcore. But it's just there is a movement in publishing right now where you're not supposed to write what you don't know. And okay, we have to talk about men
Yes.
writing women.
Well,
We have to talk about some men writing women because
Yes,
they will write
some-
them as this arrives in the room first.
yes. No, there are
And we all
bad. There are
laugh, don't
bad
we?
writers.
Yes.
They're just bad writers.
I
they
think
can't
there's
do-
like, okay, Bob Dugoni writes a female and he's fantastic at it.
Yes.
So I take back what I
There's
said. I
also
was just
women who
kidding.
can write male characters
Yes,
realistically.
very well, especially if you live in a house with a lot of them.
Yeah.
But I think, but there is a move in publishing, like, okay, so for example, and this is probably me just being personal, and I was, just for the record, totally kidding. Men can write women, obviously. You all have moms,
Yeah, we
sisters.
don't want you to have another viral.
Oh my
moment.
God, people are going to come pitchforks, and there'll be men coming. Ugh. Oh, can't have that. I have a dog, and she's mean. No, I'm kidding. There is a movement in publishing, like, for a perfect example, I have a book called Summer Reading. It's a rom-com. The main character is dyslexic. I pushed really hard for that because I had a lot of people in my life that are dyslexic, but I'm not dyslexic. And it was very, very difficult to get the approval to write something like that. And it's like, well, but I have all these people in my life. I've walked the walk adjacently. And then when it came time to publish it, I was like, well, if we publish a book that's about a dyslexic character, we really need to put it in a dyslexic-friendly font because there are 10 very specific fonts that are good for dyslexics. My publisher, bless their hearts, were like, yeah. And we got that done. But it was like the initial push to write a disability that you don't have, to write an ethnicity that you don't have, to write a gender you don't have. It's a lot harder now than it used to be.
It is, but I also think you did the work. I mean, if the author puts in the time and does the research, connects with people who are of that particular set, then yeah, that can make a difference versus somebody who's just basically trying to make a quick buck writing whatever's trendy.
Or they're using a disability to propel the plot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's no bueno.
Yeah.
Well, I get very frustrated, and I just ignore if somebody says I can't write something. I actually have a workshop that I teach. How can I write when I haven't killed a man? I mean, literally, I have not killed anybody, and yet I have killed a lot of people in books. And I could. Fortunately, I
get
do
away with it.
believe in hell. I believe in heaven and hell, and I really don't want to go down. So I'm trying to avoid killing. But I have had a little bit of pushback, but I just ignore it. I wrote a deaf character in one of my books, and it was pivotal to the storyline. He was young. I mean, they were on the run, and I did tons of research. 3 of my kids took sign language in school because they didn't want to take their option was Spanish or sign language. 3 of them opted for sign language, 2 opted for Spanish. And so I got to be really good friends with the American Sign Language teacher. And I sat down and interviewed her, and I emailed her whenever I had questions, to make sure that it was authentic. And I think if you, like you said, if you do the time, if you do the work, there's no reason I can't write about anybody. And otherwise, I mean, literally, I lead a very boring life. Nobody will want to read about what I know.
I know. I feel the same way.
And everybody has raised kids, so I'm not exactly original or unique or anything. So I do push back on stuff like that because we write stories that should appeal to everyone. I mean, they're universal kinds of stories. You make people laugh. Hopefully, I make people scared. And and you satisfy
Or in
people
Christina's
with-
case, hot. But
My mind went to the reference. Well, okay. We should keep this.
PG
Clean?
friendly
Yes,
for the
yes,
internet,
yeah.
yeah. My last question before we turn to the audience is, I've become fascinated just as a reader with the whole idea of AI. And there was a book that came out this summer that's wonderful called Romantic Friction, about an author who's, oh, it's great. It's really very fun. But the idea that, are you an author if you just plug things into a machine or a computer or whatever it is?
Oh, you went there? You went to that debate?
Yeah.
Woo! We could. Oh man, you go on the internet and it's like there's so many like diverse opinions about that. I
What's
don't have
your
one. I don't have.
You don't have an opinion? Really?
Weirdly, I don't want men to write women, but I have no opinion. Now, AI, I think, like anything, can be a tool, but I think it can also be misused. And I think it goes back to your what's your voice? AI can't make my voice.
No, it can't.
You can try, but you can't. Like someone could well, thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. You did download all my books.
Mine too.
And hers. And I gotta say, I had to take a beat that day too, where I was like,
For people that don't understand why you had that reaction to it, explain why.
I work really hard on my work. It's my voice. It's my material. What they're taking, they downloaded. I've written over 60 books. They took all of them, and then they used them to train AI. Yeah, and it's kind of like no pay, no acknowledgement, nothing. And then their reasoning was, well, if we compensated authors, we couldn't afford to do this. So I'm going to go to the Lexus dealer and just pick out a car for myself, and I'm not going to pay them because I can't afford it. So, but I should have the car I want, don't you think? I mean, so that's where I'm like, AI. I can get really hot about AI, but have I used AI to write anything? No, not ever. Have I used AI to help me with my nonfiction? Like, they asked me to write an article for Writer's Digest, so I went. And I'm not a nonfiction. I'm not a reporter. And it needed to be like a one-page thing on writing a bakery thing. So I did open up an AI thing, and I'm like, just give me an outline. Just break this. Like, how do people write articles? Because I have no idea. And it just gave me a cute little paragraph of, well, you could open with this, and then you could think about this, and I looked at that, and I was like, okay, I have some structure here. And then I went off and I wrote an article. So, like, I can see where it's a tool that can be used. But you can't, I didn't say write the article for me because it wouldn't be my voice and it wouldn't be my work and it wouldn't have my reference points of my books that I was using in the article. But you can tell me like, well, stupid, introduce yourself and then maybe mention what you've written. Yes. So I can see where it's a tool, but I'm kind of opposed. So I guess I do have an opinion.
You do.
Pop off. Not just me.
I think the technology is just changing so quickly that anything I say now will be outdated in 30 minutes and I'll sound like an idiot. But I will say that if you're looking to buy a book and you're not using your local independent bookstore, that just to be very careful because there are a lot of books that are using or stealing covers that are from authors or books that you know, and then you get it and you're like, well, this is not what I ordered. And so, I mean, Jane Friedman is this very well-known journalist who covers the publishing industry, and she has had lots of books on a certain online retailer that are not her, but they use her name, and people buy them thinking that they're going to get her expertise. And so just be very careful. Another reason to shop with your local independent bookstore.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm saying, wait, haven't these people ever seen 2001: The Space Odyssey? Haven't? Or The Matrix? Or The Terminator? AI is literally going to, I mean, I'm sorry, Gen X, this is what I grew up on. I do not trust it. But I will say this one thing, I don't use AI. I'm scared about the future of education when so many kids are now using AI to write papers. And one of my daughters is now a teacher, obviously kindergarten, so she's not worried about that yet, but I am concerned about the education system because kids are learning how, I remember when Cliff Notes was out, but we had to read the book because the teachers would make sure they would read the Cliff Notes and then they would ask you questions that couldn't be answered with the Cliff Notes. And, it's like, but now anyway, but I will say I did I asked my son a question, and he was driving to work, and he said, "Well, just you know what? Just ask ChatGPT." I'm like, "Oh, whatever." So I asked ChatGPT, and I said, and I was something related to sabotaging a barn. I needed to know technically how could somebody sabotage a water system on a farm, and Google wasn't helping. So I asked ChatGPT, "I'm sorry, I cannot answer your question because it might harm somebody or animals." And so then I said, "I'm writing a book. How can I do da da da?" "Oh, we're happy to help you." And they gave me 10 things I could do potentially to sabotage this basically to make this barn flood. And I'm like going, wow. So all I have to do is say, "I'm writing a book. How do I kill my husband?" and they're going to give me 10 ways on how to kill my husband and get away with it. Hence, I am Catholic and I do believe in heaven and hell. So Dan, you're safe. In case you're watching right now, you're absolutely safe. But I'm like going, to me, it's like, the kind of a double-edged sword there.
I think the best, sorry to interrupt, but the best, I can shout. The best thing I saw was, sorry for the virtual ones. The best thing I saw was a quote, and you guys have probably seen it too, and it's a meme, so probably everybody has, but it just really resonated. It was like, no. Technology wasn't supposed to be here to like create art. Technology was supposed to be here to mow the lawn and do the dishes so that I could create art. And and that's what I just feel like with it.
I think you're right, and I think as a reader, the way to look at it really easily is, if you're buying a handbag, do you want the $2,000 real deal, or do you want the $20 knockoff? Absolutely. Someone's done.
Fair point.
Any questions? Got a question in the front.
So it's funny because we actually, at one of our more recent family gatherings, we actually talked a lot about AI. And
What a smart family you are. Oh my gosh.
so I remember meeting you two, oh my gosh, a year or two ago, and we had, so basically my family, we talked to, so you guys know I want to be an author. So my parents wanted me to get a degree. I don't want to go to school anymore. I want to just focus on my writing. But they want me to have a backup plan, which I get. Bottom line, they're afraid that with, to your point, AI, it could go away. And I'm like, no, because to your point, doesn't have a human voice. There's just no way. It's totally different.
Well, I agree, because I honestly think, and I actually had a debate at Thriller Fest about this with another author. I don't think AI is going to be able to recreate an emotional human experience. I think that AI can technically write a story, say write a story about da-da-da-da-da, and it can technically write you a story, but it's not going to have the layers of human emotion that I think will be able to distinguish the difference between something that is artificially created and something that we can create. And we all have unique voices, and computers, it's kind of a univoice. And you might be able to say, write it humorously or write it this way. And maybe people that, might enjoy that kind of stuff, but I think we are going to hopefully last.
I think so. I think I kind of look at it like singers, I was listening to Bonnie Raitt earlier. How's that for a throwback? Love her. Auto-tune is kind of what happens now. A lot of singers will use auto-tune to make sure they're on pitch. I don't even know why they use auto-tune. If you can't sing, don't. Nobody could replicate Bonnie Raitt. Nobody can be her. There's one. You could have someone or a computer that mimics her, but you would be missing that specific way she twists notes or the resonance in her voice. And I think books are the same. We call it voice for a reason. I can email these two, and I know their voice from their email. Their voice, their author voice, leaks into their emails, as I'm sure mine does too. It's not something that I think can be imitated, no matter how good AI gets. So don't worry. I don't think it'll take your job.
Other questions? Towards the back.
How do you feel about books that have alternating points of views? Like, my favorite author I read sometimes repeatedly is Rick Riordan with the Percy Jackson and like all the different mythologies, and some of his books, like The Hero of Olympus, some of them have as many as 7 different alternating POVs from different characters. So how do you feel about those types of books?
No, you got all excited. Go.
Well, I love Rick Riordan, so I loved his Train of Our stuff too. I liked him when he was a mystery writer, so ha. But I like it. It has to be done well. I write a couple of things in multiple point of view. I write in first person. I write in third person. It depends on the story. It depends on how the story needs to be executed. I wrote one book in third person, and they came back and said, "Could you change all of that to first person?" And after I got drunk, I did it. No, I'm kidding. I don't actually drink, but much. No, it was because of accessibility. Like it had come out of my head like a movie, so I wrote it in third person, and a part of me was just like, oh, this will be really easy to get a screenplay off of this because it's, rolling out. But then my agent was actually the one who said, she said it's more accessible in first person because it's a rom-com and it's they're traveling a lot, so you're seeing a lot of new places through their point of view. I like in a lot of the romances, I love it when it flips from male to female because I want to see her from his point of view and I want to see him from her point of view. I love the Rebecca Yarros books, The Fourth Wing. Yeah, completely obsessed with Xaden and Violet. And I like that I can get in both of their heads. You know what I mean? I think we're mostly in Violet, but you get in Xaden, just enough. Are you in Violet? Yeah, that would be, there you go. Would you say that's a 4 or a 5? 5? 4? 3? 4, maybe 3? 3, 4? I would have called it. You're right, because there's not that many. But you know what it is? It's the tension. The description and the tension. Yeah, it's good. It's good. But so I like multiple point of view.
Yeah, I do too. The book that I'm editing right now has 9 different points of view, and yeah, I just counted them all up in my head because I had to try to figure. Yeah, well, I had Quinn, I have Costa, I have Catherine, I have Ryder, I have Michael, I have bad guy number 1, bad guy number 2, victim. Maybe there's 8. Victim number 1. There must be a 1.
Okay, I have a question for you. As someone who is very anal about my switching, I usually, when I switch point of views, it's either chapter to chapter, like very, very, chapter. And I even, in one of my books, have the person's name. Like one is Annabelle, one is whatever his name was, I can't remember. How do you transition with so many points of view where it doesn't get chaotic? Because like Nora Roberts, Lover, there ain't no transitions. In one paragraph you're in somebody's, and in the next paragraph you're in somebody else's, and I have a hard time keeping up because the voice change might not be that. So how do you do it with that many characters? Do you have a technique?
I don't put their names at the top of the book, but it kind of depends. So sometimes it's chapter to chapter or scene to scene. I'll do a scene break, but I will only do a scene break if there's actually a change of time and place. I do not do a scene break if it's just moving to another character and it's all supposed to be fluid. If I change mid-scene, which I do, and if I do it well, my editor doesn't even notice. And so that's my goal. If my editor doesn't comment on it, then I did it right, is I use an action tag. So like if I'm in Kara's point of view and she's having a meltdown because they're trapped in this abandoned warehouse, and then she's like having a meltdown, I'm in her point of view and I want to go to Matt's point of view, I will say, Matt, have him do an action thing. So Matt, he is like, has an inner thought and does an action. So that the reader clearly knows that Matt is going now over to console Kara as she's having this meltdown because they're trapped. And because Kara can handle anything in front of her except when she doesn't know, like when she feels trapped. Like, she feels no way out. So then I will be transition in the middle of a scene. So it just, and also love scenes. I think there's nothing better than a good love scene where you go from the female character to the male character and then the female character to the male. As long as you're doing it smoothly so that you can get both perspectives in one love scene rather than having the first love scene in her point of view and then the second love scene in his point of view. You get kind of that.
I now have to go look at all of them.
And honestly, if you, seriously, Nora does it great. And it never bothers me, but if you ever read the Eve and Rourke love scenes, you see how beautifully she does it when she goes back and forth, and how it's like, okay, that was well done. I mean, she is the master.
The
Yours
even
like
work
about
or the gold
2.5.
standard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are a 2.5?
Yeah.
Even work.
Too, maybe. Well, it's been wonderful, but PK is signaling time is up. So let's thank our authors, Allison, Christina, and Jenn. Thank you, and thank you, virtual audience, for joining us for another author program at the Poison Pen. I will, before I let you go, remind you can pre-order any of these authors' new books. We have them in the system. Thank you.
Thank you.
John.